It didn't kill me, but it made me stronger, though, because I asked myself, did you die, though? Yeah. Confessions of a Widow.
Yeah. Trying to piece it back together, I've been stressing. I ain't been the same since I lost my best friend. My thoughts is crowded, don't know what to do about it. So I figure I should sit down and talk about it. Weight of the world on my shoulders, but still I go hard. So I created a session called the Report Card. 4 C's and 2 F's, the C stands for comedy, cooking, crafting, and Christianity. The 2 F's is fashion and fitness. Then I do the comical confessions to tell you all of my business. They ask me how am I doing and I can't lie though. Yeah, damn near killed me, but did you die though? Confessions of a widow, widow, widow. But did you die though? Confessions of a widow, widow, widow. But did you die though? Nope, nope. But did you die though? But did you die though?
It didn't kill me, but it made me stronger, though, because I asked myself, did you die, though? Yeah. Confessions of a Widow. Welcome back. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'm still in this new background. Y'all love this so much. We back again for episode 6 with this background. I do have a couple more backgrounds that we're going to have, but so don't get too used to this one, but I'm glad that y'all like this one because I did this background myself. And all of these decals came from the Dollar Tree. Okay, I'm not telling y'all nothing else. That's the last secret. The last secret. But yes, these came from the Dollar Tree, and I've had them for about 3 years now. So thanks for everybody who mentioned it and everybody who loves it, and thank y'all for tuning in and watching. So today I am here with this all white dress on as a bold representation of the fact that we are saying fuck the rules. I know. Okay, let me just say, screw the rules. Okay? Oh, that reminds me of my boy, Roy Rice, a comedian. That's his slogan, screw the rules. So we just gonna have to stick with it. F the rules. Okay? Listen, it's after Labor Day. And I was very intentional about wearing this all white. Now I took a couple of pictures that we gonna ease in there so y'all can see what the full look looks like. But I got on white boots. I got on all white. F the rules. The rules don't matter. You are going to drive yourself crazy trying to follow some rules that who even invented it? Who even said no white after Labor Day? Who said that? I don't know, but at the end of the day, it's a new day. It's a new age. There are no rules in fashion. I can wear this nice winter hat in the summertime. I can wear stuff that doesn't match. It doesn't have to match. You know what I'm saying? You make it match, or celebrate the fact that it doesn't match, We're talking about F the rules today. And it goes so much further than fashion. In life, period. Stop trying to follow these rules, okay? Because nothing is what it's supposed to be. Nothing is what it seems. And you got to just make your own rules, your own path, your own way. Starting with wearing white. I'm wearing white all winter. I don't care. I got a whole white coat I'm about to bust out on them, okay? I hate that no white after Labor. It makes no sense. Because nothing is fresher than some all white Air Forces. What? No all white Air Forces in the winter? No. Come on, y'all. The rule is dumb. It makes no sense. And we're saying F the rules, okay? This reminds me so much of the 5 stages of grief. Because it's not really a rule, but it's just a list that people are supposed to go by so that you can figure out, where you are and where you're going next. And we talked about Widow Camp in the last episode, and I'm getting everybody's information. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm a little slow when it comes to getting those messages and getting back to you, but I haven't forgotten about you. I'm going to get all the people their info. So this whole rule thing reminds me of the 5 stages of grief, which is not rules, but it's just, a numbering, an orderly fashion of the way things are supposed to be. And it could not be more wrong. We're going to go over this today, okay? I remember being in my first day of Widow Camp. They gave us these little stickers, and it had the 5 stages of grief. And you turn it over, and it had a bunch of scribble marks because that's just what they are. It's BS. So if you are grieving and you know someone is grieving, I want to tell y'all, please do not follow this 5 stages of grief. Let's go over them so we can talk talk about how wrong they are and how we should say F this list. This is how they're listed, and this is in order. Okay, so the first stage of grief is denial. So I probably went through this stage for maybe 2 minutes. Not even 2 minutes. The time that it took the hospital to tell me that he was gone and then take me into the room, that's the only denial that I had. Because how are you going to be in denial that someone is gone? You know, how long are you going to deny it? They're gone. They're not with you. You had a funeral, you buried them. And I'm not sure if anybody else is having this denial or anybody else has their interpretation of it. And I don't want to dismiss anyone's feelings, but me personally, I never went through a feeling of denial. Because it was very real to me. And I remember praying and asking God to help me. And what I really wanted was I wanted my husband back. But because everything, as surreal as it was real. And I knew that I couldn't have my husband back. I knew that he was gone. I knew that he was laying in the hospital with no heartbeat. I knew that he was dead. And so why would I pray and ask God to give me my husband back when I knew that that was not a way that could happen? So what I did pray for, I prayed for a mind of understanding. Help me understand why this happened. Help me understand what happened. You know, I left the hospital with no logical explanation of what happened to my husband. And so as soon as I got that explanation to understand, you know, my prayers were mostly answered because I understood what happened. You know, it took me a longer period of time to have the full big picture of why it happened, how it happened, when it happened. But I definitely was able to have a amount of understanding. And so I really can't relate to the whole denial because I don't know. I did speak to a widow and she did tell me how there were some people in her life, not in her life, but I think, I don't want to get the story wrong, but if I remember correctly, she had a job and the people, you know, on her job didn't know that her husband had died. She didn't tell them that because she didn't want to be drilled and grilled and have to talk about it every day. And so I definitely couldn't relate to that. There are times that I wished that I could have acted like my husband was still alive, or I wish that I could have told people that, you know, that the truth. I didn't have to tell them the truth, but that I could have told people that he was still alive, or had them think that, because it's a whole nother realm, a whole nother experience that's so grueling that people do. They nosy, they ask questions, they want to know, you know, and then they come to you like, oh, don't nobody want to deal with that shit every day. Y'all stop doing that. If somebody that you know has lost someone, don't nobody want you running up to them asking them, so oh my God, so like what happened? Stop. Nobody wants that. You know what I'm saying? So I can see why she did it and how she did it, and I can understand that. And so I guess maybe part of that could have been denial, because in this little world of hers, he was still there. So I guess I can get that. But as far as like denying that it's happening, that is, I don't know. That just sounds dumb. But that's number one. So let's move on to number two. Is anger. So first denial, then anger. I don't even really think I got angry. I get angry now. I probably get more angry now than I did 2 years ago. So that's the perfect example of how this list is BS and it's all out of order, because shit. Now I'm really angry. What order is that in? I think it's cute though. Super cute little jumbo Bottega earrings. But this motherfucker just be falling down the whole episode because y'all gonna get this full look. I'm not getting up and getting another. Shit. Maybe I lied. Okay, y'all win. I got a whole nother earring on the other side, so I guess maybe it's all meant to be. But Anyway, yeah, the whole anger thing. I'm probably more angry now than I was when he first died. And that just goes to show that none of this is in order. And so, but anger, you definitely do experience anger, and it goes in and out. And I think that one of the things that you want, or one of the things that can help this anger, I'm not sure, but everybody wants somebody to blame, you know. And having someone to blame may kind of release the anger a little bit, take the edge off the anger. But I'm sure I'm to blame in somebody's, and maybe his family blames me. I don't know. But when you have someone to blame, I think that kind of lessens it. But at the end of the day, they gone and they're not coming back. And anger is something that is very relevant, but you have very minimal control over what happened after the fact. And so I do struggle with anger now, especially during holidays and during his birthdays, and especially dating. Like, I'd be so mad dating because I literally had the love of my life, and my life was perfect. Everything, he was supportive to my career. I was supportive to his. You know, he loved me and my family. My children accepted them. I loved him and his family. His child accepted. Everything was like perfect. My life was like perfect. And we went through premarital counseling, and we did postmarital counseling, and we had issues like any other married couple would have. And we had really gotten to the point where we were having, everything was smooth sailing. We didn't have any issues. Everything, stuff that I would trip off of, I wasn't tripping off of anymore. We learned about, the three C's in our relationship. And, compromise, communication, compassion. And I learned to not sweat the small stuff. And so we had an amazing marriage, and he was made for me. So I often get mad now that I'm dating, because I'm like, this, like, really? I'm really out here got to deal with this shit after I already had the love of my life. Took me 40 some years to find love of my life. Now he's dead. I'm back out here dating. Talking about what's your favorite color. Oh, like, that shit pisses you off. It pisses me off so freaking bad. It pisses me off that he's dead. And so I think that I go through more anger now. And I also, I'm not going to get into this too much, but I have a extremely large amount of anger and rage because I know that his death could have been prevented, but that's a whole nother podcast. But anger is definitely all up in the mix. Whether it's the second stage of the stages of grief, I'm not sure, but I'm sure that I experience more anger now than I did when he first died. So anger. What's this one is bargaining. I'm telling y'all, these are the 5 stages of grief. 5 stages of grief developed by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I'm going to email that bitch and tell her she's crazy. I really am. I'm finna email you, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I'm going to find her email and email her because, girl, what is this? Bargaining? Maybe you all experience, like I said, I'm just one person who lost their little 40-year-old husband. Everything was fine. He complained of chest pains. Next morning, dead. So I don't speak to everybody. This is just me. And I don't even understand what bargaining is. Maybe you can leave it in the comments to help me understand this nonsense, because at what bargaining, bring him back to life and take somebody else? Is that the type of bargaining that we're talking about? And I'm going to tell you this. I can't even believe I'm going to say this out loud because I really am ashamed of myself. And I know deep down that I didn't have anything to do with this. But when my husband died, maybe this is the bargaining that they're talking about. But when my husband died, I was so upset. I was so hurt. I was so upset and hurt for myself, but I was most upset and hurt for his daughter. because she was so young and he loved that little girl so much. I don't think that she will ever understand how much her daddy loved her. And it was just so unfair to me that she had to go live the rest of her life without a father. Yes, she has a grandfather. Yes, she has people that love her, but nobody ain't gonna love that baby like her daddy loves her. The bond that he had with her was just unimaginable, and it was the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen. And it's one of the things that made me fall in love with him. And so when he died, I was like, how on earth could he die? How could he be dead? And I was like, it's people out here. And when I say people, I was thinking in my mind of people that were like him in the same field that he was in his life. And I was like, God, he got friends that don't even got no kids. Why they couldn't die? And I said a name. And it wasn't that I was wishing death on them, but it was one of his friends. I said, he ain't even got no kids. God ain't taking nobody. This wouldn't even affected people the way that it's affecting the people that loved him. Why he couldn't have died? A week later, a week and a half later, that friend that he had died. I was like, now you listening to me, God? You ain't listening to nothing else now? And of course, I knew that I didn't have anything to do with it. You know what I'm saying? He died from a drug overdose. But I did have that thought in my mind, why couldn't that be him? About a year later, I'm thinking, it's why him? He was in shape. He was healthy. He helped get other people help. Why none of these out of shape people ain't dying? Almost a year to the date, another one of our friends, a comedian that was out of shape and overweight, died. I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, let me just not, God just take these negative thoughts out of my head, because I think that there are power in our thoughts. And so I felt really bad. So, rest in peace to all of the people that I mentioned. And the comedy community probably isn't even tuned into any of this, but some of them will know exactly what I'm talking about. Fuquan Johnson and Teddy Ray. About 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks after Nick died, Fuquan died. Then 364 days after his death, the day before his 1 year death anniversary, Teddy Ray died. And it's like, and that's what I was asking God, like, why these people who ain't got no kids and all of this, you're going to take somebody, a father, and that was just so selfish and rude of me to even think that. But I can't help my thoughts. Those were my thoughts. So maybe that's where the whole bargaining things come in, don't take him, take him. I don't know what bargaining means. If somebody else knows what it means, you can drop it in the comments. I don't know what bargaining means. Take me, maybe that's what it means. Don't take him, take me. I never said that. Like I said, I had way more outfits than he did at the time, so I never would say that. So I don't know what bargaining means, but I think it's stupid and it should be on her, and I'm finna email this lady and find out what the hell she means. So anyway, let's move right along to depression. Depression is the next one. So we got denial, anger, bargaining, and depression. So depression is definitely something that immediately follows a death. I went into a deep depression to the point where I could not eat, I could not sleep. I had to be medicated, sedated, excuse me, just to be able to get up and function. And it was the deepest depression. My heart was there's this ache in your heart. And anyone who has lost a loved one knows the ache that I'm talking about. Is this ache in your heart. And my heart was just so hurt and broken. I had never experienced anything like that. And my doctor had, did these tests, and he was like, this is just, I'm really concerned about you. I want to put you on this medication because, there is a such thing as dying of heartbreak. There is a such thing of dying of a broken heart. And I really didn't want to die. I wanted to live, but I just couldn't help it was just so painful. And so, that heartache turns into depression. You can't eat. You imagine being hungry and having food here to eat and you can't eat it. Imagine being sleepy, tired, exhausted, haven't slept in days, and doing everything, laying down, getting into bed, closing your eyes, rocking, and you can't sleep. The level of anxiety that I was faced with was just so high. My brain couldn't calm down enough for me to even sleep. It was insane. I thank God every day for delivering me from that. But the depression is definitely something, a big part of grief. And I don't know what stage it was obviously the third stage, it looks like, or maybe the fourth on this list. 1, 2, 3, yeah, the fourth stage. So that's something that you go through later. And grief is depression. It's something that's just there the whole time. So the point that I am now, I'm no longer on medication, thank God. I don't have to take medication anymore. And I no longer am depressed. I do have moments of sadness, um, but and those moments of sadness sometimes can lead to a brief um, time of depression. But I'm thankful that I'm able to minimize it to where it's just a couple of days or maybe a weekend or a moment that I can snap out of. My life has forever changed, and so the anger hasn't really ever gone away or subsided, but the depression is not severe enough. Let me just say that the depression is not severe enough for me to be on medication. It's not severe enough for me to not be able to work. It's not severe enough for me to not be able to eat or sleep. And so I'm grateful for that. Do I have moments where I feel depressed? Yes. But I'm grateful that it's not nowhere near as severe as it was. And I'm going to tell you one of the things that helped me get out of my depression and helped me appreciate the things that I had. It's going back to being in those widow organizations. And so Soaring Spirits, we talked about Widow Camp. And so we have like group therapy sessions where, you're in there with a bunch of widows and we all share, we talk about how we're feeling and why we're feeling that way and, where we are. And so I was heavily involved in that. And I remember being in the group session, and I remember listening to these women's stories. And I never will forget one of the ones that sticks with me to this day. A woman and her husband had been in a car accident, and her husband died at the accident, but she was in a coma. And she was in a coma for 4 months. When she woke up out of her coma, her husband was dead, buried, funeral, everything over. She woke up out of the coma. She was so messed up that she couldn't even walk. Her brain was functioning now, and she remembered who she was, and she had her memory, everything. And her husband was dead and buried. And so as soon as she woke up, she looking for her husband. They tell her husband is dead. They buried him. They had the funeral already. They didn't expect her to make it out of her coma. Now she has to learn how to walk again. She can't walk. She's like totally messed up. And after she went through this long phase of rehabilitation, she done lost her house. She can't work. Her entire life had completely changed. Oh, I'm sorry. And it was just so traumatic listening to that. And then talked about how she was going and, trying to figure out where she was going to live. And, not her rehabilitation is going good, but she was just like, and here I am, able bodied. I can walk, I can talk, I can do all this. And I'm talking about I don't want to go to work because I'm depressed. I'm like, let me get my ass up and get on this stage. You realize that as bad as things are, they could be worse. That was one of the women who her husband had been dead for 8 years. I won't forget her either. Her husband had been dead for 8 years. Her husband died. All of a sudden, he was the breadwinner. She was a housewife. He had a really good job, really good insurance. Um, and she got all this money. She was responsible with the money when her husband died. She got a life insurance policy. But after like 5 years, the insurance was gone. And she didn't know how to work. She went and got a job. This lady ended up having to sell her house, get an apartment. The apartment couldn't fit all of her stuff. And it was like she was on there like her second week of her apartment. And she was just talking about how sad she was and how small the apartment was. And after she did the calculations, even with her selling her house, she was only going to be able to live and be able to afford to pay her rent for like 3 years. Now, remember, her husband was there for 8 years. 5 years after he died, they ran out of them. It was just like she couldn't even navigate through life. Now she got a job. The job don't even make enough money for her to be able to afford the apartment. It was just crazy. It's just like, God, thank you that although I have been tremendously impacted by my husband's death, I can walk. I'm not crippled. I can talk. I can work. I don't have to move. I can still live the same lifestyle that I lived when my husband was alive. And so that helped me. That helped me to be grateful. Like, I just felt like such an ungrateful bitch. Here I am over here mad, because I ain't getting none no more. And who am I going to have sex with? And this woman can't even walk. She got to learn how to walk again. She imagine waking up after a 4-month coma and your husband is dead. You didn't even know. It's just insane. So, so what helped me with my depression, what helped me be able to get back in there, a lot of different things help. But hearing those stories and thinking about how bad it could be, I always thought that if anything happened to my husband, I thought that he would get into a car accident. And I would worry and pray so hard when he would drive. And I just asked God to protect him driving in LA. And, because he didn't start driving until he was, almost 40. And he's from New York. New York is not a car-bound city. Everybody takes the train. And when he moved here, he just took the train here. And, as his life changed, you needed to learn how to drive. And so he learned how to drive late. And he was just, oh, y'all don't know what I would do to be riding next to him, going 10 miles under the speed limit. And I'm just not saying nothing. But, oh, God, I miss him so much. But I always thought that if something happened to him, I thought that it would be a car accident. I really did. And so I was like, when I was, I was, battling, fighting, like I was praying that God protected him on the road. I wasn't asking him that he protect him from all these other things that could happen to him. And so, that depression is tricky because it's easy to fall back into it, especially being, lonely. Now I have no one. I lost my whole family when my husband died. My children were grown and on their own. And so it was just me, my husband, and my stepdaughter. And so, I lost my whole family. Yeah, I do have my extended family and I have my friends, but, I'm on my own. And so that's depressing within itself, knowing that I had a future that was bright with him, that he had a future that was bright and that was cut short. He was an amazing person, a very hilarious comedian, just an all-around good guy. And just the fact that he's no longer here is depressing within itself. So depression, where it's placed in this stage of grief. Fourth, right before the last part, the last one, which I'm going to mention, I think that depression is probably the biggest thing on this list because I don't think that it's possible to go through any type of death involving trauma and not suffer from depression. Um, Last is acceptance. It's when you accept that your loved one is gone, and should it be last? I don't know. I definitely have accepted that he is gone. I'm not happy about it, but I definitely accepted it very, very quickly. I had to accept it. I mean, how do you? I mean, it's. I guess when I say how do you, because it's me personally, I don't struggle with that part, but you have to accept this. This is the reality. Acceptance is kind of similar to the denial to me. And like I said, I'm sure there are some people who lost their loved ones and they're like, no, he's still alive. They're in complete denial. I'm sure that's they haven't accepted it yet. I actually do know a widow. I'm not gonna say that she hasn't accepted it and that she's in denial, but she definitely has not faced her grief. She definitely, just talking to her and listening to her talk, she hasn't, you know, faced her grief full throttle, and her husband has been dead for years. But everybody has their own process. This list means nothing. This list is BS. Depression is probably the biggest one. I think that I went through a depression before I went through any type of denial or anger or bargaining. I think that these are just dumb to even be in here. But this is just a perfect example how, nothing has rules. Life is not fair. If life were fair, I would be sitting here talking to you about where me and my husband just came back from celebrating the holiday. But life is not fair, and there are no rules. And so when you try to follow rules, you cheat yourself. Now, I may sound crazy to you, and that's fine, but this is me and my outlook. So it is what it is. I just feel like when you follow the rules, you set yourself up for disappointment because life isn't fair. Nothing is fair. Wherever industry you work in, trust me, it's not fair. It's not fair that Trump is president. Why is he president? Why? How? How is this possible that this convicted felon can get into the highest office that the country holds? I don't want to hear nothing. Life is not fair. So this game is, whatever profession you're in. I'm in the comedy industry. This comedy industry ain't fair. You would think that this industry is based on, people receiving success based on their talent. Let me tell you something. Receiving success in Hollywood has nothing to do with talent. It's about relationships that you develop and who you're connected with. And I'm not knocking nobody. At the end of the day, I'm grateful for my career. I'm happy in my career. I have a different career path than most. A lot of comedians probably wouldn't want my career path because I'm somewhat in the shadows. I'm mainly an opening act, and then I have my TV credits and I headline sometimes. And I'm at a point in my life where give me the money, fuck the fame. I know how the industry works, and I'm happy with where I am. But the most wealthy and successful comedians are not the funniest. That's not how it is. Any that goes for anything. There are basketball players as good as LeBron that you will never see because they didn't have the path that he had. They didn't have the opportunities that he had. So, when you're looking at life itself and the unfairness of life, you have to incorporate this whole thing called grief. Because is it fair that your husband or whatever got shot or your husband got cancer? None of this stuff is fair. So when you're looking at it, from a healing perspective, you can't be logical because that's not the world that we live in. There's no logic when it comes to these things. So when you handle yourself, you have to handle it in somewhat of an illogical way. So I try not to fake the funk. I put on a smile a lot when I'm crying inside because I want to show people that you can push through, you can make it through. And some people out here are sick. People people take satisfaction in someone else hurting. You know, go post a video. I go post a video talking about, oh my God, I'm so hurt. I'm so sad. My husband died. Oh, this is the loneliest journey. But that video gonna get 20,000 views. Everybody gonna watch that video. People want to see suffering. But let me go post. I had a good day today, y'all. I got up this morning and I prayed and I asked God to get me through. And here I am. I got through. Nobody want to see that shit. Nobody wants to see that. People want to see pain. They want to see drama. They want to see negativity. That's what people thrive off of, And so, like I said last week, whenever, this ain't going to be the hottest podcast. I'm not saying the things that I could be saying, but if I wanted to say some things that's going to snatch your attention, it's going to be clickbait and it's going to be, ooh, let us see that. I could do that, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make people who are feeling bad feel better. I'm here. Kevin Hart had a special one time, Laugh in My Pain. I'm here to share with you my pain so you don't feel so bad about what you're going through. So the things that keep me through is the report card session. We're going to jump right into that because these are the things that help me. And I just wanted to, F the rules. That's going to be the title, though. That's going to be the title, F the rules. Because there are no rules in this thing called life. You got to cheat to win. We have a convicted felon for president. So, and I'm not saying go run into stores and steal stuff and live wrong and don't be a law-abiding citizen. I'm not saying that, you got to do whatever is going to give you the ability to sleep at night. And so when you try to follow some structured path, when you try to follow some don't wear white after Labor Day, all it does is rip you from your creativity. You ripping me from my ability to style and be fashionable and be myself by telling me that I can't wear a certain color after a certain date. And as stupid as that sounds, it's just as stupid as this whole 5 stages of grief. It's just as stupid as some of these things that we live by. So you have to be creative and you have to figure out a way around a lot of these ridiculous things that we stick with. So the things that have helped me in my grief are called my report card. We're going to get into the report card session and and the report card session is made up of 6 grades, 4 C's and 2 F's, and we teeter around with some of these and we mix and match and we call them different things or however I'm feeling. But the 4 C's typically stand for Christ, crafting, cooking, and comedy. And the 2 F's stands for fashion and fitness. I know I'm not fit. And I don't never talk about fitness, but let me just be transparent and honest with you all. And this is not an excuse because there is no excuse, but one of the reasons that I struggle in the whole fitness is because working out makes me sad. Those of you who know a little more about me know that my husband was a personal trainer and that is how we met. I hired him to train me. And that is when we connected, and he was my personal trainer, my best friend, my writing partner. He was my everything. But it all started at Planet Fitness on Crenshaw and Imperial, and I have not walked into that Planet Fitness in 4 years. Every time I walk past it, there's a post office right next door. Every time I walk past it, my heart sinks. I look inside and I think about when we were there together, and it's difficult for me to work out. My personal choice of working out is working out outside. We worked out outside a lot during COVID when I lost all the weight from my wedding, and I definitely know that I need to be doing certain things to get my body right. But every time I exercise, I think about my husband. It's impossible not to. I'm doing the exercises that he taught me how to do, that he trained me. He showed me, you're not doing this properly, do it like this, and um, it's very triggering to work out. And I often think about him, and that is the main reason why I struggle with fitness now. But we're going to get through this together. I have a trip planned soon, and my 50th birthday is coming up soon in April. And so I definitely want to get tight and right for my 50th. I want to be able to say, I'm 50 years old and I'm in the best shape of my life. That's what I want to be able to say. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to get over this, and I'm going to need y'all help and encouragement. So, we're not going to do an F for fitness today, but I promise we're going to get there. We're going to do another F, and that's food. Food or cooking, which is one of the C's and the 4 C's. So, today I cook lasagna. Let me tell you something. Lasagna, this is going to tie all back in. Lasagna is one of my favorite things to cook, but there are several different ways to cook it. Everybody has their own way. Everybody has their own meat that they use. And as I describe my lasagna, we're going to play a little video of me preparing the lasagna for today. But lasagna is not a cheap dish to make. So excuse me. Here in the video, you'll see that this lasagna meal cost about $70. You got to get the good stuff. You can't be cheap. You can't get the cheap cheese. You can't get the cheap meat. I use a very non-greasy ground beef. I use 93.7. So I get the 93.7 ground beef. And listen, I'm not showing you guys my secret recipe because I had to kill all y'all. I don't want to have to kill y'all. This is a podcast called But Did You Die Though? And all y'all would have to die if I gave y'all my lasagna recipe. So I'm only going to give y'all the steps that I did after the lasagna recipe. Now, I will tell you that typically I like to use Italian sausage in my lasagna. It's pork, it's more greasy, and more people like to stay away from that pork. But to get the best flavor, you want to use that hot Italian sausage, the sweet Italian sausage, as well as ground beef. A combination of those three. That's how I make my lasagna typically, but I didn't do any pork. I just did the ground beef this time. And it was still absolutely delicious, right, Doughboy?
Amazing.
Okay. And so, I put my sauce, and when you do the ground beef, I go ahead and tell you this. When you put your mixture of meats and you cooking it up, go ahead and chop up some onions and some bell peppers and some garlic in there to get that extra flavor. And then you want to have all the nice, good veggies in your spaghetti sauce. I call it spaghetti sauce. I use the same sauce for my spaghetti as my lasagna. But here's me making it, and it was absolutely delicious. Now, I don't want to hear that ain't how you make lasagna. This is the way you're supposed to make it. Because then we just talk about how it ain't no rules. Have y'all been, hello? You make your lasagna how you want to make it. I'm going to make mine how I want to make it. I know mine be bussin'. Now, I did have to stuff everything into this dish, this casserole dish, because this wasn't as deep as I had anticipated. But I wanted to do the clear so I could show y'all how this is bubbling in the middle, and see, this is when you know it's done, when your cheese is all melted and it's bubbling right here. But this is my lasagna. It turned out perfect. You want to get that nice crisp brown top by baking it at 350 for at least 38 minutes, and it was just perfect. And so I had a salad to go with it, but the lettuce was kind of wilted, so we just had the lasagna with the garlic bread. Now I cook my garlic bread in the air fryer because it ain't no rules, baby. However you want to make it is how you want to make it. And so cooking is very important to me because I've always loved to cook, and that's one of the things that was ripped from me after my husband died because I had no one to cook for. And so I regained my love for cooking when I started dating. And the guy that I dated, I cooked for him almost daily. And and it brought back my love for cooking. And so that was probably I did have some good things come out of that relationship that I was in, and that probably was one of them, was that I was reacquainted with my love for cooking. And so it's one of the hands-on things that I do to make me feel better. I can be creative, and I love a pretty display, and so it's one of the things that make me happy. So um if you can get the lasagna done for under $70, that's on you. Congratulations. I had some ingredients at home. I had a little bit of ingredients left, but for the most part, these grocery stores are just completely out of control. And you're going to spend, 60 to 80 bucks on your lasagna if you get the good stuff. So that is my report card session, is a lasagna. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Go back and review this and watch it slow, the lasagna part, because it's going kind of fast. But this is me making a lasagna, and I hope you enjoyed the video. So we're coming to the tail end, and we have so many comical confessions that I'm actually going to pause the video and come back and read to you one of these amazing comedy confessions, and I'm going to end the podcast on that. So here's the comical confession that we had written in. Enjoy it. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Here's a comical confession, and you guys have an amazing day. Thank y'all for supporting and watching. But did you die, though? Confessions of a Widow. Have a good one.